Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm Courtney,
And I'm MK.
and how are you?
I'm okay. Yesterday I had a very emotional day. Um, we went to my mom and dad and Dan and I went to see an opera.
Ooh,
Um, I love the opera, but this opera, if anyone is in a place where it comes to a place near you, you have to see this. It's a new American opera, and it was actually written by and commissioned by the U.S. Army Band. Um, and it is called The Falling and the Rising. And it is the story of a soldier who gets a TBI from a landmine and goes through a coma. And like all of the dream sequences they go through in their coma are like different soldiers' perspectives of why they're in the war, like in the army, and like the things that you go through as a soldier. And
mhm.
it was like, it was a lot. Like it was one of those things where we laughed and we all were like, we have so much to feel right now that like we don't even actually like know what to think. But it was beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming to.
I don't think it doesn't really tour. We were only the 20th place that
Oh,
they've
it was already here.
oh, okay. I was like, this is only the 20th production they've ever had of it, ever. Um, and
Oh,
and it
it's
can
about a woman who's
yes.
a soldier. Okay,
Yes.
so it came to Jefferson Performing Arts Center in 2019.
Okay. Yeah, it first was written in 2016 and we're only the 20th
Mhm.
production they've ever done of it because the other thing is it's commissioned by the US Army. Um, no place that has it can charge admission for it. You're not allowed to have ticket sales, and
Mm,
every single person in it is part of the US Army. So
interesting.
all of the opera singers, everyone in it is part of the army. And some of them are part of the army field band, some of them are actually like combat officers like who just have beautiful voices. Like but it was everyone involved in it is military. And it was wild. Like it was
That sounds amazing.
so good.
I
Um,
don't think I could see it.
oh my God. I like stopped. There
Yeah.
weren't none between my mom and I, there were not enough tissues for us. Like it was so much.
Mhm.
And like it was really also like there's a talk back at the end of it, and everyone who was talking back, people were sharing their stories about them being vets, about their family members being vets. And one of the things that one of the guys in the audience said that like really struck a chord with me is he served for 2 years in the 70s. And he said the worst thing that has happened for the understanding of the military in this country is volunteer service because when everyone was drafted or had the ability to be drafted, um, any family could be a military family, could understand it.
Mhm.
And obviously there's difference between like career military and like people who are like officers' children and
Sure.
army brats. And like there's always going to be a level of involvement that varies. But he was like, the worst thing that ever happened for the civilians to understand it is getting rid of the draft because now people can go their whole lives and never know anyone in the military. Um, But like, obviously, I have been going through a lot with my grandfather in the last few years, and so that was really, really
Mhm.
fucking tough. But like one of the characters is a jump master, and the jump masters wear the silliest hats, in my opinion, of all of the Army Rangers. And my uncle was a jump master, so as soon as that character came out on stage, I knew what the story was going to be. I knew it was going to be about jumping from an airplane because that was what Jeff's hat looked like. So like,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, but so people who don't have that experience or that connection to the army might not react the same way that I did. Um, but I think that everyone would get something out of it because like the one thing that the lyricist or the librettist was there talking to us about the show, and he said and all of the lyrics of the opera are compilations of interviews he did, and no one aria comes from one soldier, but like lots of interviews went into making all these different characters. And he said that like the most powerful thing that happened was that so many more than you would think of the soldiers when like asked like what they would want civilians to know was that they that soldiers don't think civilians really understand the fact that they would die for us without ever knowing who
Right.
we are. And like that, it was just, it was a lot.
Yeah, it feels like it was a lot. I cannot
Yeah.
find a picture of this hat, by the way. I was gonna look at your Ranger hat, Jumpmaster Ranger hat. Is that what you called it?
Yeah. I'll send you a
Okay,
picture.
that's what I searched.
No, I will send you a picture of my uncle wearing it so you can
Perfect.
see. Yeah.
I would like to visualize this. Yes. Yeah, I don't have a lot of family in like Air Force or Army. They're mostly Navy and Marines. So I don't know the uniform as much
right.
outside of that.
Yeah, no, my family, everyone that I am close to that is military is Army. So
My friends that I know that are in the military are all Air Force. But well, I have a friend who's Army, but he's not career Army. He's like I don't remember exactly what he is in the Army, but yeah, I probably can't watch that because I would just be sad for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's beautiful, and I think everyone should go see it. Except me.
But just also if you do go see it, prepare yourself that I didn't wear makeup yesterday because I was fully aware that I would not survive.
Right.
So yeah.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
How are you?
Well, a little sad now, but okay. It just it was a little sad. I'll bring it back up. I've been reading a lot more. I think I told you I was doing a lot of like NetGalley reading to try and like clean up my reviews my ARC reviews that I've been doing. And so I read 2 books recently that both are weirdly up our alleys without being anything alike. At all. And one was called The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. And it was very interestingly written because it's about a serial killer, but she writes it like she's writing, like the main character is writing the book about the serial killer. And so it's a very like weird situation. And like I listened to the audiobook and I couldn't like stay connected to it as well as I would like, but it was a good story.
Okay.
It had some really like freaky parts. So like if you're looking for them, like check it out, but know that it did as an audiobook did not keep my attention as I would have liked it to. Okay. But then I did listen to another book that did keep my attention, called If the Shoe Fits, and it's by Disney Publishing. And it is a spin on Cinderella, but it's like Cinderella meets The Bachelor. The entire book is literally just a Bachelor season. And it's so like she's a designer. She's like a plus size designer. And so she's also like one of the first plus size people to be like on The Bachelor, but they call it Before Midnight or something. Because Cinderella. Yeah. Her name is Cindy. Like it is very in your face. It is, they don't hide the ball at all. But like The Bachelor's mom is a designer too. Like it's a whole thing, but it is just watching a season of The Bachelor with the main character being a play on Cinderella. I'm obsessed. Like it is so wild. It was really good. It's fine, but I really enjoyed it.
Honestly, I'm here for a plus size Cinderella.
Yeah.
My students in Thailand would be so happy.
Those are funny looking hats.
The red one is my yeah, that's the hat. And I was like, oh,
I love it. I love it.
Somebody is going to listen to this and tell me that I'm wrong and that a certain class of everybody in the Army wears that and that I'm just like making shit up. But like in my mind, that is what that hat's for. And I have no idea. I'm just going off of my experience. So
I think you're right.
Perfect.
But yeah, so that's how I'm reading a lot. I've actually just started listening to the book Murder Your Employer. Have you heard about that book yet?
I have heard about it. I haven't listened to it or read it because I feel as though it's not just a book you can carry around with you.
That's why I wanted it initially, because I wanted to carry it around with me. But in reality, I'm listening to the audiobook because one of the narrators is Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh.
And so I've just started it. I'm like an hour into the audiobook. It's like 14 hours. So I'm very early beginnings, but I'm very excited about it. So I've just been reading a lot. But yeah, so hopefully I brought us up a little bit, but even more so, Could you bring us up
Sure.
a bit more? We're in a happy week, right?
Yes, we're in a happy week. For those of you who are just tuning into the podcast now on episode 340 something,
Welcome.
welcome. But also every week I give part of a Grey's Anatomy monologue, but the first half of an episode is always really depressing. So it's always the even weeks that are good. So we are on a good week today. Responsibility. It really does suck. Unfortunately, once you get past the age of braces and training bras, responsibility doesn't go away. It can't be avoided. Either someone makes us face it or we suffer the consequences. But still, adulthood has its perks. I mean, the shoes, the sex, the no parents anywhere telling you what to do. That's pretty damn good.
I guess. It still sucks. Yeah, responsibility still sucks, but it's fine. It is true that you do get to you can do whatever you want.
What if you are an adult who doesn't like shoes, who's not having sex, and who still lives with their parents? Because then do you have any perks?
No.
I'm asking for a friend, obviously.
Right. Sure. Absolutely. I do not live with my parents, so I cannot fully give you an opinion on that. Even though sometimes Rachel and Nick are like my parents. It's great.
That's great.
So, same.
That's how I feel about Doug. Dan and I are his parents. Doug's gonna be gone all summer, so it's really weird. It's and then
that is weird.
And then today, Dan was asking Doug what his schedule was, and I answered. And Dan was like, "How do you know when he's leaving?" And I go, "Because I pay attention when he talks. I know where my child's going to be. Thank you."
Right. Yeah. It's okay. They never know when I'm going to be here or not. They ask me every day. They're like, "What? Where are you today? What is your plan?" I don't even have a car. They don't even know where I am half the time. They're just like, "Where? Where are you? When are you? Where?" So it's fine. Yeah. So today we are continuing on with our season 1 of Hannibal. We are on episode 12, Relevance. That's how I'm going to say it.
Great. I didn't even look at the episode title this time to tell you to prepare myself.
It's fine. It's fine. It stands for spiced or added spice.
Okay.
And it is plural, meaning that there are multiple things having spice added to them. I guess that's fine. It aired June 13th of 2013, and it is rated 8.8 out of 10, which means we went back up. Number one songs, number one book are still the same. The number one movie is Man of Steel.
Okay.
I've seen approximately one Superman movie, I think, so I haven't seen it. But
which Superman did you see? Who was Superman when you saw it?
I don't remember. It didn't stick with me. Early Superman.
Great.
So if there was a 90s one, there was an 80s one, maybe even one of those would have been the one I saw.
So I'm not here to say that Man of Steel is a good movie because honestly, everything in the DCEU
sure
could be better.
Right.
But I am here to say that Henry Cavill is one of the hottest men on planet Earth. Because not only does he somehow look like a sculpture of a Greek god that actually came to life, he does that while playing Dungeons and Dragons and hanging out with his 5-year-old nephew. So yeah, it's a lot for my ovaries.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I saw Superman Returns.
With the one from this early 80s with Christopher Reeve, Superman 2?
No, the one from 06. That one kind of seems like the one I may have seen.
With Brandon, what's his fucking face as Superman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That may have been the one I saw. I'm not really sure though. I'm trying to look now and I'm like, maybe I've not seen a Superman movie. Maybe I just thought I did. Surely I have. I'm sure I've seen one of the ones from the 80s. There's 1,000. So I'm sure I've seen ones from the 80s, if nothing else.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay, sorry. I don't need to look at that anymore. I need to continue with the episode we're working on. Let's just hide that. Yeah, so Man of Steel, number one movie. There we go.
Great.
On this day, couple of things happened. Ariel Castro, if you remember him, he kidnapped three women,
Yeah.
and one of the women, I forgot Amanda Berry had escaped, and that's how he got caught. He is in trials right now, and today was the day he pled not guilty.
Nice.
He did end up getting prosecuted in life
Yeah.
plus 1,000 years.
Well,
So it worked out for the best, but
yeah, he did in fact kidnap three women. So like,
right. And hold them captive.
yeah,
So bad things, but good things. The patent office ruled that you cannot patent the BRCA gene, which through like myriad services, I remember we studied this case in law school because it was absolutely bonkers that whoever discovered the BRCA gene tried to patent it so that then you had to like purchase it from them to do any research or studies on, so that any of the like were not able to make medications for people who were
yeah.
potentially going to have
I
breast cancer.
I am not really aware of science. Like I don't really
Right.
fully understand science, but I don't that doesn't sound like something that should be able to be patented. Like
Yeah, and it was 2013 when they decided that it was not allowed to be patented.
that's like saying like you patented a pancreas. Like I don't
Right.
like
Right. Correct.
great.
Yeah, it was a
What
good
a
time. It was a
fucking
good time.
world.
Um, there have been a lot of scientific issues with like specifically with the BRCA gene has been in
Yeah.
lawsuits a lot because they've tried to patent, the gene. They tried to patent like some of the underlying the way I explain it is not how the rest of the world probably would explain it, but it's
Great.
the same concept of you can't copyright like the blues progression because that's the basis
Yeah.
of a
All
lot of
blue.
music.
Yeah.
And so you can't patent in the same vein the BRCA gene or the process for researching the BRCA gene and applying it. Like,
Right.
and I think that is kind of similarly to what they said in the conclusion. I don't remember it all the way because it was a
Yeah.
lot of scientific detail, but that's essentially what they came to.
But I can also understand, I mean, I don't, I think we should be able to research medical stuff, but like I can also understand that like if specific processes for research
Right.
were like developed because of this, and the person who invented that process or the machinery necessary for that process wanted to patent something, I could understand them being like fighting for that.
Well, they did, and but it's also a sense of like with trademarks and stuff too. It's a similar thing. Is usually there's a set number of years that you can do that, and then it becomes public, or you can't have it forever.
Right.
And so there was, and I mean, it's 2013, so like people have been studying the BRCA gene for longer than that.
So
And
didn't Angelina
yeah,
Jolie have her like mastectomy before 2013?
yeah, I think it was like mid early 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, and usually it's I don't know the patent link because I haven't studied as much as the others. But like trademarks usually like you know there's I think patents 20 years. I think trademark is usually like it depends on the trademark. But
Entertainment trademarks are about 100 years.
yeah, they're just it depends on like literary versus character versus like music.
Right,
Like
right,
there's
right.
a lot of different things.
The
But
only thing
yeah,
I understand about literary trademarks is the fact that prior to the 1860s, they did not exist, and that Charles Dickens is
mhm.
actually the one who fought for them to exist so that people would stop
Oh,
copying his work because people were copying his work and trying to reprint it in other newspapers.
mhm.
And he was like, how about the fucking no? Um,
I didn't
and
realize that, but good
yes,
for him.
that's the only thing I know about literary trademarks at all. But that's because I know what Charles Dickens did in his life, not because I know
Right.
shit about the law.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so great. Maybe
Yeah.
less people will die now, post 2013. We'll see. It is what it is. But our directors, Michael Reimer, writers Chris Mancato, and editors Ben Wilkinson. So samesies.
Right.
Um, our star of the week, who I was like, oh, I can't believe we haven't talked about this person yet, but we indeed have not because we keep having guest stars that are in place.
Yeah.
Casey Roll, who plays Abigail Hobbs.
And what a week to
Um,
talk about her.
what a week. Like, mm. So she's known for White Lie, Red Riding Hood from 2011, Sisters and Brothers, and Wayward Pines, which also might be a good one to
Yeah, I've heard
talk about
great
on
things.
here.
I've heard great things about that.
So when I was recommended Hemlock Grove when it came out, I was recommended Wayward Pines. Like those were recommended to be together.
Makes sense.
And so I think it might be similar vibes.
Which
I don't
is
know.
maybe great after
Or
watching
maybe
some,
terrible.
right, like, but also after
Yeah.
watching some like really high class, like high good horror, maybe we should just watching something totally shit.
I know. I know. Take a break. She
Sorry, I'm just really distracted because I can't find an alcohol content on this bottle.
all of it. If it's like market price. If it's too high for if you can't find it, you don't need it.
You don't
You
need
can't
it.
afford it. And so if you
That
can't find
that
it,
feels like illegal though.
it is illegal. They do have to put an alcohol content on there somewhere. It may have been on the box or something though if you got it in a box.
Maybe.
So
Weird.
mhm.
Okay. I was just gonna compare it to the one that I was gonna open when I finished it, but there's no.
There's no way to know.
I mean, plus
So
it's
no
so
way.
aerated, it's probably twice as much as it was to begin with.
Sure, yeah. It's ready to go. Um, rare enough. So Casey is the daughter of Mike Roll, who is a director. He has directed a few episodes of Supernatural, so she was actually a guest in Supernatural.
Okay.
But he's done a few different things. And then her mom is Jan Derbyshire, who is a playwright and comic. I did not recognize anything she wrote. She's done a lot of like one-woman comedic shows.
Okay.
But I'm sure she's great.
Yeah.
Um, Casey joined Star Trek: A Universe this January. So she is currently in cast of Star Trek: A Universe. Or will be in soon episodes. I don't really
I
know when
think
she announced it in January, so I don't
Wait,
know
Star Trek a
a
universe.
universe. Mhm.
I don't think that's out yet. That's why I have no idea what it's talking about.
Maybe not. It was announced in January, so I was like, I'm not sure
I think
if
it's the
it
newest
started.
it's the newest Star Trek and it hasn't really come out yet.
Oh, it's like a whole new series
Yeah,
of Star
yeah,
Trek.
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, she's in it. So if you are missing her after watching this with us, you can go check her out there one day. And as you were speaking about Once Upon a Time earlier, um, she played Megara. Did I say her name right? I just call her Meg. I don't
Yeah,
ever
Megara.
Megara.
Yeah.
In the series. So a little
Huh.
crossover from our Sci-Fi Sunday to our Thriller
Weird.
Thursday. All right. So let's do this thing. So in our recap, we know this is going to be an absolutely bonkers episode because we get a recap of Georgia, Abigail, and Will losing his mind. So
Correct.
all of the things that were
All
like,
of the things
these
that
are
we
things
thought
we're
were
coming
going to
to happen right now.
Sorry, there
Yes.
is no show called Universe for
It
Star
says
Trek.
Star Trek: A Universe on her social media. Now I'm questioning everything.
Sorry, that's why I was like, what? I really don't know what that is though.
Let's see. Star Trek Casey roll. I'll just look it up with her, see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Star Trek a universe, and they start talking about it. Like she's saying that in general. So she's joining section 31.
Which is a new show that has not premiered at all yet, and it's upcoming television film that will be coming out.
It's got Michelle Yeoh.
Yes.
Michelle Yeoh.
Yes, it will be released on Paramount Plus, which is where all the Star Trek stuff is released right now, but they just finished filming in March, so they don't have a date for release yet. But it's a movie, not a show. That's why I was like,
got it.
I was like, it's a television movie, but it's a movie. I was like, I'm pretty caught up to date on Star Trek, and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I am not. So I didn't know what I was talking about.
Great.
I just saw it on her Instagram.
No, the newest season of Star Trek Prodigy, which is one of the animated shows, came out today. So Dan has been very, very excited about Star Trek all week.
I'm trying to decide if, speaking of Star Trek, I'm going to move into Star Trek world after Marvel world, or if one, it's going to take me long enough that we're done with Stargate by then, and then I will just do Star Trek.
I mean, the thing is, the Star Trek world is massive.
I know.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's not something I wouldn't want to talk about.
But you'd want to talk about something shorter before we get
right.
to
I think I want to take a break before I dive into another
Right.
14-year universe.
Right. Yeah, no, totally fair, totally fair. But also, like, it's taken me 4 years to watch like
6 Star
through the
Wars.
early 90s of Marvel. So
Yeah.
like it might take me another 20 to finish it.
Especially with the Disney
who's
Plus,
to say?
especially with the Disney Plus universe of Marvel.
I know I need to go through a full, and I really want to do a full watch of like Star Wars too. I'll probably do Star Wars before I do Star Trek, just because I have a basis for that already. Like
Yeah.
I've watched at least some of the Star Wars, like I watched the Star Wars movies,
Yeah.
the originals, and the one new one, not all of the new ones. But I have a lot better basis for that, so I might go to that one next.
Yes. Sorry for
before
this
I
sci-fi interruption to your Thriller Thursday.
I'm not sorry. You should love it.
Great.
Be thrilled.
I mean,
It's a
I'm
great
always thrilled.
interjection.
I'm always thrilled to talk about sci-fi. But you
Right.
had literally just started trying to explain the episode, and I was like, I think you're wrong.
Look, it is what it is. It's fine. It's fine. We gotta correct us for all the people out there, because I sure don't know what's going on in the world of Star Trek. So we start at the hospital, and Will has gone to visit Georgia, who looks much better. She looks like Dead Like Me Georgia.
Yeah.
Right. Like, as opposed to actual dead. She looked like actual dead Georgia as opposed to not actual dead Georgia.
Right.
And so that's good for her. Although when she's like, how do I look? And she's like, do I look okay? And he's like, you look pretty. And I was like, that's a weird response, but okay. And then
But also
she's like,
she said, do I look alive?
yeah. And I was
Correct.
like, no, because in Dead Like Me, you look better than when you looked alive. And so it was fine. It put a little thing in my head.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he starts talking about, she's like, did they figure out what's wrong with you past the fever? And he's like, no, I think it's the fever doing a lot of things. Like, they're going to run some tests. And she's like, yeah, they're going to do that forever. Like, you're never going to get an answer. You're just going to have tests run until you die, basically, and nothing's going to be changed.
Love that for you.
Yeah. And we learned that Georgia is supposed to be getting shock treatment soon, which, like, they're like, yeah, that's the proper treatment for this. And I was like, that feels like not proper treatment for anything.
But also the fact
fine.
that she was like, electroshock therapy is
sounds more terrifying than shock therapy.
No, she said, yeah, she was like, shock therapy sounds nicer. I was like, does it?
Yeah. I was like, I don't think that's true, but okay. And then we learned that they are talking about like everything she's seen, and she's like, yeah, I saw. She's like, I know what's happened, but I don't remember any of it. It's like I'm in this dream. He's like, well, what else have you dreamed? Have you dreamed of killing other people? And she was like, no, but I remember like seeing you kill the doctor, but I never saw your face. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And so a lot of mixed memories here with people who don't know what's going on, which is not helpful. So then we pop over to Will's room, and Hannibal has brought him chicken soup. And I thought that this looked like his home in the first episode, where they were sitting by the window.
Yeah.
And I meant to look up and see if they just repurposed the room, and I forgot. So
yeah,
who's to say? We're gonna say that's what happened.
Perfect.
Because it did look exactly like the setup from the first or second episode. I don't remember when that was. And so then Will starts asking him, he's like, do you think these symptoms could be just from the fever? Like, all these things have been happening. Like, I know that it really kicked off. And Hannibal's like, sure, the fever could be dementia. Like, that's a bold claim. Like, that is a big statement.
Right.
So now he's telling him he could have dementia, and he's like, dementia could have other symptoms, fever could have other symptoms. There's no way to know. These are probably all the things that are happening for you.
Yeah.
And like, also, that's definitely early onset if he has it, like, not just straight up dementia. Like, it is what it is, but that's fine. I mean, it's obviously not what he has, so whatever, Hannibal. So then we go to Georgia, who's laying down and she hears something hit inside of her chamber. It's a hyperbaric chamber is what it's called.
Yes.
And someone has dropped a comb in her tank. And she went to brush her hair and the static started a fire and she burned alive.
This was horrifying.
What an intro. So I did some research because it was horrifying.
Yeah.
Did I write down any of that research? No, it's just in my brain now. Okay.
Perfect.
So I did. IMDb says that there's error because you can't cause a fire just in a hyperbaric chamber from a static reaction. I found mixed responses to that on the internet from scientific sources.
I was gonna say I don't think IMDb is correct on that. I
Right. And so I did some reading, and some people said that like a lot of times there's not like a ton of there's more than there needs to be, but there's not a huge amount of issues with hyperbaric chambers, but they are kind of always a risk. They said they're not, but based on what I read, they are. And so
I don't know if you remember the season of Grey's Anatomy with the hyperbaric chamber and the depressurization. So in Grey's Anatomy, they had a hyperbaric chamber, and the problem was they had to like basically like submarine dive you into this chamber with like because it wasn't like a single person hyperbaric chamber, it was like a surgical hyperbaric chamber, and they had to like submarine deep dive, depressurize, oxygenate you to go in and out of this, like if you're scuba diving basically. And there was an episode where they were stuck in there, but they needed to get out for like an emergency or something, but they couldn't like wait the amount of time for the depressurization. Like they're like really fucking intense machines.
Yeah, and they're terrifying. And now I've unlocked a new fear in my life. But most people say that, or most of the like issues that have caused because there was a short in one of the wiring, has caused it. So it was short circuit, which they said didn't happen here. Sometimes plastic from the machine gets inside, which seems to cause an issue, which is upsetting, but also not what happened here. They made clear because they, later we'll talk about that. So Brian Fuller shared this article, about what sparked his interest here. About a boy who was trapped and burned alive in a hospital oxygen chamber. This was in Italy, and he talks about that usually when you're put into these chambers, you're put in there completely nude or with one cotton gown, like no socks, no underwear, nothing that can like create electric static or whatever. And this poor boy, the doctor had put him in there with PJs on, like not.
Well, they talk about that. They talk about that in the episode. Like that's one of the things that the one guy, I never fucking remember his name, the older
Price.
Price, brings up about like a death that happened before. It's that same story.
It's this one, So he brings it up because he's in there. So he's wearing these pajamas, and they put the toys in there with him because, like, turns out this boy burned alive in this hyperbaric chamber, which is awful. But his brother died of pneumonia in the same hospital 5 years before. So this hospital feels shady, first of all. But there
have been 77 human fatalities that occurred in 35 different hyperbaric chamber fires, which means that not all the deaths were the people that were inside the chamber. According to this article from the National Library of Medicine that I'm looking at. And that, in the grand scheme of numbers of hospital deaths, is not high.
Right. But trapped hospital deaths feels high.
But
you're not actually trapped. You're asleep
But also like that just feels like a risk I'm not willing to take.
Yeah, because you need the three things to set off the combustion, and you have oxygen, which obviously it's a chamber of oxygen. So you have oxygen, you have to have a spark, which is where the static came in, and then you have to have fuel. And a lot of times the fuel is the clothing. If you wear the inappropriate clothing, could be hair, could be skin and body.
Yeah.
Those are the things that like,
And
so
depending
it's like
on
you have all of the elements there
and
at all
depending on
times.
depending on how much electrical wiring or what kind of room the hyperbaric chamber is in, then you have, if it gets outside of the chamber at all, then you have an electrical fire on top of it.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't look to see what all they treat with hyperbaric chambers, but I pray that I never have to worry about that. And if I do, maybe just kill me instead. Like that might be a faster, more like I'd rather you kill me than me burn alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just so terrifying that she's screaming, no one can hear anything because the button for sound was not turned on. Which also, why are you turning off your button for sound? Like the patient should be able to be like, maybe you turn off your mic, but like they should not be in a chamber completely silent that no one can hear them ever.
Right.
Like what is that?
Fuck is that?
Yeah. So I am upset. And I hate it. A lot. I hate it a lot. But that's how our sweet Georgia dies. Again, toilet dropped on you, probably easier death than burning alive in a hyperbaric chamber.
I could
So.
think of very few things that are worse than burning alive in a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And then we get our credits. So what an opening. Just smacks you in the face. And so now we're with Will and Jack, and we're with the team. And Will and Jack are specifically looking at the charred body, and Will is not happy because they're like, I think it was a suicide. Like she did this herself. She, sparked this. First of all, obviously it's very easy to do, so probably not a way someone's committing suicide. But Will's like, it's absolutely not. He's like, I know that she like was, she was fine. I just I just saw her.
And they're trying to argue with him. And I'm just like, I understand that he's struggling right now. Right. But y'all are under the impression that he's only in the hospital for a fever.
Right.
And so up until this point, your entire use for him has been to get inside the minds of other people, of killers.
Right.
You literally pay him and trust him to tell you what people are thinking and feeling and believing to their core. Not just in a way, like a normal analysis way, in a like fucked up, he's inside their head kind of way. And you really want to doubt his analysis of this girl? For fucking what reason? I was pissed.
I know.
I was pissed.
I was so mad. But yeah, so then we've left Viv in there to stay, and we go to Freddie and Abigail. Because we are hitting all the high points this episode. And they're discussing the book deal and how it goes. And apparently I meant to look this up too. I try to put like really big stars by things.
By things that you want to look up after
to look them up.
Yeah.
And I always forget. So they're talking about the book and she's like, well, what ideas do you have? And she was like, well, I had an idea for the title and it's the last victim, but somebody else has already written a book called that and it was a bestseller.
Yes, it is a nonfiction work by Jason Moss, which in which he details his correspondence with multiple notorious American serial killers.
Yeah, John Wayne Gacy, Richard Ramirez, Henry Lee Lucas, Jeffrey Dahmer, Elmer Wayne Henley, and Charles Manson.
Okay, and let me tell you, Elmer Wayne Henley Jr. Sorry, I'm just in the middle of a series of podcasts about what the fuck is the guy who was actually the serial killer that Elmer Wayne Henley was helping. Coral? Yes. Oh my God.
I was trying to remember because I just was like, his is the name I know the least, but I know of it. So I clicked on it and that was first
Dean Coral. Yeah. Dean Coral, I'm just in the middle of a 4-part podcast series about Dean Coral and Elmer Wayne Henley.
Is it Last Podcast on the Left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Also, I'm very far behind on Last Podcast on the Left, and I think
me too. I haven't listened to that one yet.
Oh yeah, but so this is 2015, 2016 where I'm at in Last Podcast on the Left, and apparently there's some controversy and the hosts have changed and there's some drama, but I don't know anything about the drama.
I do know that. I know all of those things.
I don't know any of the details of the drama. I just know that where I'm at in the podcast is pre all of the drama and pre Ben leaving the podcast, and I don't know what Ben did, and I'm afraid to do any research on it because I don't want to
ask.
Yeah, I'm afraid to ask because I'm then it'll ruin me listening to the rest of the podcast, and I just want to get caught up before I find out.
Yep, that's fair. I think they fixed it. It wasn't great, but I think they're fixed. I think they're okay now. So like, I think you're okay to listen to it still.
Okay.
Based on my understanding. I have not listened to the podcast all the way, but based on what I've heard from other content creators and what I did some research on, you're okay to keep going.
Okay. Because I'm like, what? Yeah. He doesn't seem like, I mean, granted, again, 2016, doesn't seem like a bad person. I don't really know what's happening. And then I was like, what do you mean he's the one that everybody's mad at?
I think he was a little assaulty, but they did get rid of him and they've reanalyzed, and he was a little assaulty and a little unsympathetic to a lot of cases that were ongoing at the time, it seems, is what, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, I just assumed that Henry is gonna be the one who fucks everything up.
I think he's the one that a lot of people are just like, oh, why does he say that? You can't say that. But like,
right, because he doesn't
at the same time, like,
he says it as part of a character, and I get that, but he says things that I'm like,
he also changes some of the ways he says things too,
because of all the drama that happens. Okay, because I'm like listening to it again from 8 years ago. My brain was like, if somebody's going to be a little assaulty, Ben is the most level-headed person on the podcast.
I think it was. I don't remember.
No, I know.
But whoever Ben left, that's what it was.
I know Ben is the one who's no longer on the podcast. So,
okay, yeah. All right.
But then again, nobody expected things to go down the way they did with Jensen at home. So,
ain't that the truth? I hope you are here for the exposition because we have stories to tell. We have got research to give you and stories to tell. So. Oh yeah, so this man who wrote this book called The Last Victim. Wow, that's wild. I bet it's a very interesting and terrifying
book. I really want to read it. Really,
I don't know that I do. But I want you to read it. I want you to tell me about it.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to sleep at night after reading it.
Right.
But I really want to read it.
I would like to know what it says, but I don't know that I can handle reading it.
I just think some of those guys, I can't imagine what they would say. Like, because
I mean, I've read stuff like with Charles Manson, like his really aren't. I mean, his are crazy, but they're less.
Well, because Charles Manson,
I guess
Charles Manson was never the one who he never actually murdered anyone. He did a lot of fucked up shit, and he is considered a serial killer because of the way he ran the cult. But he personally never.
This was all very psychological. Yes. It was not very like violent per se.
John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer are just like wild case studies into like. What it takes for a person to unravel. And
Brian Peck, who was the one who abused Drake Bell, was friends with John Wayne Gacy back in the day.
I know, which was just the fucking most wild shit in the world to me.
What a wild thing. Ugh, the world is a mess. Ugh. So don't be friends with serial killers. That's your lesson today.
Correct.
Or with strange people, because you may not know they're serial killers, but there's something wrong with someone when there's something that wrong with them. Like
I've never had someone in my life that I know some people who've done some shit. I've never had someone in my life that has been arrested for a crime or been accused of committing a crime, especially to the level of like assault or murder, that I didn't know was not a good person. Like I've never been like
right. Like I was gonna say you didn't know them. I was like, oh, I know some people, but yeah,
no. But like everybody's like, oh, I know. Like when you see serial killers and stuff, and they're like, I never could have suspected like that he was like that. No one in my, and granted, I don't know a lot of people who are murderers. Thankfully, like it's not like it's not the crowd I hang out with.
So your 5 closest people.
But I've never met someone who like turned out to have committed a crime of that level that I didn't
and been shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I've been disappointed. I've been sad. I've been worried for the people like that are closer to them. But like I've never heard of one of those crimes and gone like, oh my God, really? That person did something? Right. Like you just
and I've been shocked at some of the things that were done, but not that by the person who did them.
Right. And so if you are friends with someone that gives you that kind of feeling in your gut, don't be friends with them.
Right.
Or if someone is close to someone who gives that kind of feeling in your gut, protect that person.
Yes. Yeah. Good times. Wow, we have a lot of PSAs for you today. I Eyes and ears open, friends. Eyes and ears open.
Well, especially because fuck this episode. This episode tells you why you shouldn't be friends with people who give you bad feelings in your gut. Sorry to get to the end of the episode already, but like, fuck that.
I know. It's, yeah. Don't be friends with therapists. That's what this episode tells you.
They're all liars.
JK, I live with one. I haven't died yet. I'm not in any danger.
No, yeah, the therapist you live with, and like my sister-in-law's a social worker, and she's like, fine. Like I'm not, but like,
right. So, Freddie and Abigail are talking about this book.
Yes, and that's as far as we've gotten.
Yep. And then Abigail still thinks that at this point you can see that she still thinks that Nick killed Marissa. And that's why she's still like okay with the fact that she's killed him.
Yeah.
And Freddie basically is like, that didn't happen. Nick is an innocent person. Like,
yeah,
he was going through a lot.
She's like, whoever killed Nick, the only thing Nick was ever guilty of was being upset that his sister died. Like, whoever killed him killed an innocent person.
And you see that Freddie is getting ready to frame Will for it, even though she knows he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And she knows that Abigail did do it.
Yeah. Which of course then upsets Abigail on multiple counts, because Abigail's covering for herself, breaking when she figures out that Nick did nothing wrong, and trying to protect Will because he's one of the only people who's protecting her.
Right. So that's good. That's good. That's a good setup for Will being framed in the future, probably. Because if anybody can do it, Freddie can do it. So
Freddie's not the one I'm worried about.
Not this moment. But yeah, so we go to Will's home and he sees a really clunky version of Georgia. And he follows her outside. She's like almost like a glitch in this, like the Matrix is what she looks like.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And so he follows her outside.
It almost reminds me of the scene in Donnie Darko where he follows the rabbit.
I haven't seen that.
Oh.
We talk about this like once a year.
I know. Never mind. For those of you who have seen Donnie Darko, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about with the rabbit outside the house. But like, you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So moving on.
Okay. And so he follows her outside and she's impaled by the antlers of the deer. And she starts saying "see," which is exactly what Hobbs said after he was shot in the floor of the kitchen. So that was still like alive Hobbs, mostly alive Hobbs.
Yeah, but it's also the moment where she's like telling him in his mind that the copycat killer killed her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's like, look, see.
Mm-hmm. Which is also what Hobbs was doing, telling him that Hannibal was there. So then we go to Jack and Will, and Will has checked himself out of the hospital.
He's like,
because this was clearly all a dream. He wasn't actually at home in this little rendition. And he says,
"Oh, see, I thought it was a dream, but I did think he was also at home."
No, he was still at the hospital. He hadn't checked out yet. He's just now checked out because he had his like pull, his IV pull before.
Okay. Okay,
yeah.
That makes more sense. But I thought he went home and then had a fucked up dream while he was at home, because that would not be surprising either.
No, it would not be surprising, but I don't think he's home yet. I think he's just checked out after having the dream.
Yeah.
Because now he's like, getting the spinal picture. So he says that Georgia was murdered by whoever killed Dr. Sutcliffe, which is accurate.
Correct.
And Jack is just not listening to him. He's like, this is not anything we're talking about.
And then Will makes the final, like, is this where he makes the connection that all of that was the same person?
Not yet, because first Price, we're like in the same scene. But like Price finds plastic with hair on it. And this is where he like clicks, because he's like, could it have been a comb? And then he starts making the connections between all of like Hobbs copycats and all of like, the Georgia copycat and all this stuff. And he's like, I think the person that's killing everyone is the same person. And that whoever killed Nick, or that Nick was not a copycat, even though we thought it was him initially.
Yeah. He is like, whoever killed Marcia or Marissa and whatever the other girl in the field and Dr. Sutcliffe and Georgia, it's all the same person. And they're like, and
Yep.
Jack's like, we already blamed someone for that and they're dead. And he's like, well, we were fucking wrong then.
We
Like, I
were
don't know
wrong.
it's like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yup.
He's like, my magic brain is not foolproof.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then Jack goes to see Hannibal and he starts asking about Will's fever. And he's like, is this it? Like, are we okay now that the fever's passed? Like, is he back to
Yeah.
normal? And then he starts asking about his relationship with Abigail. And he's like, what is that relationship now? What is going on? What is the situation?
Yeah.
And Jack's just like, I'm not sure. Like Hannibal's like, well, it's mental illness, all of this. I've been trying to look into it. And he's like, well, I'm trying to figure out if it's mental illness or just the way his brain works. Like,
Yeah. He's like, did we ever stop to think that maybe his brain just works so much differently than ours than we label it as mental illness? And like, fucking cheers to that. Like,
right.
because
Valid.
for how long did we talk about people on the spectrum like as if there was something so deficient about them? Like,
I was watching one of the early episodes of CSI, and Grissom is obviously autistic, and he's not really shown as mentally ill in that way.
yeah.
But it's clear that he's autistic still. And I was watching an episode, and one of the characters was autistic in the episode.
Yay.
And he was so not well.
Well, and I mean,
like,
but also
bad.
the thing is like, think about like the way Grissom is and like the way we've talked about in Stargate about Rodney and like the people that were like not labeled, but clearly what we understand now as autistic, but like it was just because they were smart. Like, and then versus the people that they were like, oh, they're autistic. And it was like the most negative thing you could say about someone. And like we had, and even so, like even 20 years ago, our understanding of the spectrum was like insane. And like, it's just, I mean, and also like the fact that like we used to describe women who suffered from like PMDD and other PMS disorders as like having mental hysteria and like not being fucking capable functioning human beings. Like our understanding of like neurodivergence is wild.
Yeah. And like they did, at least in this episode, like they made some correlations to be like, oh, this kid's really smart. He's really good at this. Oh, Grissom, you do this too. And like they never came out and said it, but they did at least make the correlation that like a like quote unquote normal person that lives everyday life and is doing things that is just really smart could also be autistic. It doesn't have to be this guy who can't hardly speak and can't form social situations correctly. Like
I saw this video. It was a stand-up comedian, and she was talking about how she had just been diagnosed, like as an adult, as being on the autism spectrum disorder. And she's like, "I'm not telling you that to shock you guys. I'm aware that you've already figured that out." She's like, "There were exactly 2 people in the entire world who were shocked at my diagnosis: my dad and my mom." She goes, "And I came home to tell them that I had been diagnosed. My dad, who would not look up from his model train set, and she." And she like, I forget exactly what she said her mom was doing, but she just goes, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I get it now. I get it now. That's so funny. Yeah. Yep. So could be mental illness, could be trauma, could be that he has encephalitis eating his brain alive and no one will tell him.
Or could just be neurodivergence.
Could be
a rainbow of choices.
We have so many choices for Will. And so then Jack goes to Jillian because you started the source. If you can't figure out what's going on, proper move.
Which
not helpful,
honestly,
not
help. Yeah, not helpful. Fuck her. Right. But thank God he was like, maybe Hannibal's the problem. Because for the first time in 12 episodes, has somebody said maybe Hannibal's the problem.
Literally in my notes in this section, I have this is the first time that Jack has felt like a real like agent because he's actually using his brain. He's not jumping to conclusions. He's not being emotional. He's not like
he's not expecting 2 fucking psychopaths to do things for him.
Yeah. And so I was like, thank God it doesn't last for the whole episode. But this scene, I did feel that way. So he goes to talk to Jillian about Hannibal.
Yeah.
And he tells her that he thinks that Hannibal's withholding murder information. And he's like, I think he knows more than he's telling me because obviously he thinks Abigail's done something, which she has.
Yeah.
And so he goes talk to her and she's like, you're coming to ask me questions, but you don't have like any
Oh,
type of like official request. Like you don't have any like demands. Like I can't just give you patient information. And he's like,
yeah.
no, I get it. But I think like if we work together, maybe we can figure this out. And so he's like, well, then let's talk about you if we can't talk about Hannibal. And so he starts talking about the patient who attacked Jillian and who died. And turns out that he was actually referred by Hannibal to Jillian, and that's new news. And
Yeah.
he swallowed his tongue while he was attacking her, and that's how he died, which is what happens in Silence of the Lambs, one of the films, how one of the people in the jail dies. So if that's not a clue to anything.
Nope.
And then he starts, of course, bringing up Franklin and the friend Tobias. I could not remember his name to save my life earlier when I was trying to remember it. Franklin and Tobias. And then he's like, well, what do you think about like him and Will? Like, do you think, you see a detriment? Like, are they friends? Like, what's going on? He's like, no, he's taking care of Will and he always will. Like, that's basically his only friend. So he's gonna for sure, do that.
Yeah.
And then she even says she thinks that Will needs more friends like Hannibal. And I was like, not even close. Not even a little bit.
And here's the thing. Disagree. Obviously, 100% disagree.
Right.
But I do find it interesting that she was like, Hannibal doesn't think of Will as a patient. He thinks of Will as a friend. And Jack was like, Will is my friend also. And she goes, well, he'd be better off with more friends like Hannibal, which is not necessarily saying that. I mean, I don't agree with thinking that Hannibal's a good friend. But really, the dig in the moment had less to do with Hannibal and more to do with the fact that Jack does not treat Will the way he should treat somebody he cares about. And that is 100% true. And that was absolutely gaslighting. Like that was like, and not gaslighting because there was truth in it, but that was 100% manipulating Jack. That was 100% not to condone what Hannibal's done, but to get Jack to see himself the way he really is. And I did appreciate that.
It is nice that that she mentioned it that way, but I think he just needs a whole new group of friends.
Oh, sure. He needs,
I think everyone
he needs a vacation to Fiji
except Beverly.
Who's not in this fucking episode.
And they make a point to note that.
Yeah, at one point, the boys are saying something fucking ridiculous, and Jack just goes, where is Beverly?
Right. Obviously, she's the only one who could do anything around here.
Correct.
So, she's the only one we can keep. But yeah, so then we go back to the lab, and this is when Jack's talking with Price and Zeller about everything. And he's told them that he wants them to track Hobbs down and start building connections and seeing if there's like an actual logical connection there, or if it's just something Will's come up with in his brain.
Right.
And so off they go. So then we're with Abigail and Will, and she starts, and they're talking at the mental home, and she's like, I thought there was something wrong with me because I always thought that like my dad was so like ugly and people were like so ugly when they killed people, and I didn't feel ugly when I killed Nick.
Yeah.
And obviously it's because she thought he killed other people. But she's telling him this, and she's like, I thought my dad was. And they start talking about killing Hobbs, and she's like, did you feel ugly? And he was like, I felt powerful. Like he was like, I didn't. And she's like, oh, it's like you fixed the problem. Like you knew you found an end to it. It wasn't a sense of like, I like killing people. It was a sense of this terrible situation is finally over because you solved it. And that's how they both feel, which is good for them and bad for the rest of the world.
Well, no, but I think it does make sense because neither one of them was killing maliciously, neither one of them was killing violently, neither one of them was like angry. It was because something happened and it was bad, and bad things were going to keep happening, and so they ended it. The biggest problem is that they both feel that they were wrong. And that's why I think they both feel so guilty, because shit just keeps going wrong. Like nothing has gotten better.
Right. And that's the thing is like, it's good news because that means they're not actually psychopaths either. Because they know the killing is wrong. The bad news is that they're the two that are going to get blamed for everything because everyone's now targeting them. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I meant, like, for the
yeah.
But like, because they're the two probably most sane people who are just trauma
fucking wild. Yeah, it's fucking wild to think that is where sanity is on this show, but that's where we're at.
So they're talking about that, and it turns out they both still feel trapped by them because Abigail's like, this is not the life I was supposed to have. Like, none of this would have happened without him doing all these things. Like, and then he killed my mom, so it's just me. Like, none of this was supposed to happen. And Will also feels trapped by him because he killed him and he can't get it out of his brain,
Well, and she
obviously.
also, oh no, this was sorry, the conversation she had with Freddie way earlier where she said she doesn't like the title The Last Victim because she doesn't think she is her dad's last victim because like even after he died, people still got hurt because of him.
Right, right. And then he says that he think he can catch the copycat killer, but he needs her help. And I was like, you are not a good Scooby-Doo team, but
No.
I guess good luck. Um, so then Hannibal and Jillian are hanging out like best buds as they do. And she tells him about Jack's visit. And she tells him that whatever he's doing with Will, he needs to stop it because it's just things are getting worse. Jack's getting suspicious, etc. And
Yeah.
he says that he's protecting him from influence. He says, I'm just protecting him. And he's like, so you can protect your patients, but I can't protect mine. Because obviously she's protecting him as well. We know about the murdery thing.
Yes.
And but she tells him that he has to maintain his boundaries with Will because this is not one of those situations where he can not do that.
Yeah.
So now we're with Will and Hannibal because of course that's the next stop. And Will says he's feeling much better. He's like, I feel like myself. This fever has broken. It's gone. Like I think that's all it was. Do you think that's possible? And then Hannibal's like, maybe not. But then he starts talking about the copycat and he's like, the copycat wasn't planning on framing Georgia. Like he never wanted her to be the one that was like on the hook for these murders. He wanted to frame me. Yeah. And he's like, you just sound paranoid. And he's like, no. I'm finally thinking clearly. Like, I'm going to take Abigail to Minnesota. We're going to go back to where it started. We're going to like think this through and kind of like figure it out. And Hannibal tells him that it's all a delusion and that he won't allow him to do this. He's like, you can't do any of these things. These are all bad things for you. And
no, Hannibal, they're bad things for you.
Right. Because he starts telling him, he's like, it's personality stuff. Like you're dissociating like all these things. And he goes to tell Jack that later. But yeah, so then we go back to the FBI and their research has shown them that Abigail was traveling with Hobbs as the bait every time he found a new girl, which we knew, but they did not.
We knew, yeah.
Which Jack did say from the beginning. He's not wrong. But,
yeah.
Went about it maybe not quite the right way.
I mean, and yeah, he went about it the wrong way. And also he was so angry about the idea that this had anything to do with Miriam. And that the Ripper had anything to do with Hobbs. And he was so clouded by that and so worried about the case as a case that he didn't think about the fact that if Abigail was involved as a teenage girl whose father was the serial killer, very, very little is she at fault. And that's not to say that she doesn't have to face up to something. Like there is obviously like she has to take responsibility for like, but to blame her and act like she was a willing, like an active participant in this is like saying that Monica Lewinsky was a willing and active participant in the affair with Bill Clinton. Like it's a power issue that we have to address, and especially with someone that young, the trauma and the influence, they're not in a place to make decisions.
And the fear, because she knows that if he doesn't kill someone else, he's killing her. Like,
yeah,
I mean, fear is a huge factor, like in something like that. So,
which is actually why I'd be really interested to read what Wayne Henley has to say, because of what his relationship with Dean Corll was.
With Dean Corll was, yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. That would be very interesting. Yeah. So Jack, of course, after finding out this, he thinks that Abigail is killing everyone because either she has a taste for murder now or she's trying to impress someone. Both incorrect. But
which is, again, giving her way more autonomy in these murders than she ever fucking had.
Yeah. Yep. So then we go to Freddie and Jack. And he's walked into the mental hospital to arrest Abigail, and Freddie is there, and she's like, Will snuck her out. And she's like, which I find strange because he's her guardian, her legal guardian, and can just check her out, but he very clearly snuck her out instead of like doing it the proper way. And
Well, but
so then
she also says when Jack first gets there that either Jack's there to arrest Abigail or to arrest
or
Will.
as Will.
And his reaction, she goes, "Okay, well then I know who you're looking for based on your reaction."
Yeah.
Because Franny's a couple steps ahead of where Jack probably wants her to be.
Right. And she asked him if Abigail killed Nick Boyle, which she knows she didn't, but she's trying to figure out kind of like where Jack is. And then at the very end, she just says, what is Will hiding? Like, which is true, he's hiding stuff, but not the bad reasons.
Yeah.
So then we go to Jack and Hannibal, and he starts asking about Will and Abigail again. And Hannibal says that he's in this disassociated, like, personal state. And so, like, he, isn't always himself. He becomes a second person, and that's why he's losing time. That's why, these false memories are happening. And he was like, well, why didn't you tell me this? He said, I was trying to decide if it was trauma or mental illness. And Jack says that they have evidence of Abigail's involvement. And then Hannibal's like, I have to play you something. And so he plays back a recording about Marissa's murder, where Will's commenting on it and saying he like has these memories in his head. And which is probably
but also
helpful.
he plays multiple clips from different conversations with Will, and not all of them are related to the same thing, and they're very much taken out of context. That is his backup tape for when he needs to frame Will for this shit. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then they decide that Hannibal starts saying that Will's second personality is Hobbs. And he's like, well, what was Hobbs going to do? He was going to kill Abigail. So now he's put in Jack's head that Will has taken Abigail, kidnapped her to go kill her. Not a good sign.
Which is the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah. So
Will is probably the only person in this entire show who is not out to get Abigail.
Right.
Because Freddie doesn't care. She just wants the book and the money. Jack is a fucking asshole. Hannibal is terrible and will blame everybody else for his problems. Like, Alana cares about Abigail, but she doesn't know anything really. Like, Will is the only person who actually gives a shit what happens to Abigail.
What a time. Yep. So then we go to Will and Abigail, who are on the plane to go to Minnesota, and they're, chatting away, talking about some things, and he's like, I'm totally fine now, no worries. So they go to visit the old cabin where the antlers are.
While they're on the plane, is that when he finds out, or is it not until they get to the cabin about her being with her dad?
It's in the cabin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're in the cabin and the antlers are, and he starts sweating. And so we start seeing that he's like getting ready to start seeing hallucinations again.
Yeah.
And this is where he's talking to her, and she's like making clear that she's the one who did it. And we see him lift her and put her on antlers. Like, he kills her, but then we come back to reality, and it was just another one of his delusions.
But he is still angry at her because he's found out that she did lie to him and that she is involved.
Right. And so she starts asking him if he ever hunts, and says fishing is basically the same. And that's what kicks him off to realize she was involved. And then so he's like, I know that Eve, I don't think you're killing these people, but if you're not, you know who is. Like, you know what's going on here. And she says that if anyone that she knew was doing it, it would be him.
Yeah.
So now she thinks that he's killing people. And then he wakes up on a plane in Virginia with no Abigail.
By himself.
By himself.
Way past when he was supposed to get off the plane.
Way past. And he has no idea what's going on. He doesn't know where he is or why he's there. And he asked the stewardess if he had a young woman with him, and she's like, everyone's left. Yeah. One, not an answer to my question.
Correct.
But he's just like, okay. And then we go back to Abigail, who has gone home. She's back in the house where her family died, and Hannibal is there. Because of course he is.
course he is.
And he tells her that he was worried about her. And she says, yeah. And she tells him that she left Will at the cabin, that he, found out about everything and she was scared of him. She didn't feel safe around him. And then Hannibal starts breaking the news that like Jack knows that she killed Nick and that she helped with like Hobbs murders. And she's like, well, I don't want any of that. And then she was like, wait, but then Jack said that whoever called that morning probably was working with Hobbs, like working with my dad to do this. And she's like, why did you call that morning? So this whole time, we weren't sure if she knew it was him or not. She knew the whole time that Hannibal was the one who had called. And he tells her that he called to tell him that Will was coming because he was curious. And then he goes on to say that that's also why he killed Marissa. That's also why he killed everyone else, because he was curious. And she asked him, are you going to kill me? And
Well,
he's just like,
she said, how many times have you killed?
oh yeah.
And he
And
says, more than you can count.
Yeah, well, he says more than your dad ever did.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, are you gonna kill me? And he's like, I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you in this lifetime.
When I tell you, I almost fucking screamed out loud at the end of that episode.
Yeah. What a time. So that's the end of that episode. Do you have predictions, thoughts, feelings?
Well, other than the fact that he's gonna murder her and blame it
For
on
sure.
Will, and Will's gonna get fucking
Absolutely.
arrested for being the copycat killer and killing all of these fucking people that he did not kill.
And Will doesn't remember the cabin to Virginia, so he has no idea that he didn't do it.
Yeah, he doesn't know where Abigail is or if she's alive or not.
It's so, this episode was so insane. Like, oh my God, I don't even know. Like,
Yeah. I have
I don't
nothing.
know. So yeah, I mean, I think all of that is true. I think that's the next episode. I think we find out Abigail is dead. Will gets blamed. Will gets arrested and is committed. Like that's the next episode. And then he's gonna be the one held accountable for the copycat murders until further notice. So that's good. So who do you want to punch in the face?
Everyone. But
Mhm.
Hannibal.
Yeah.
For right now, because
Hannibal's definitely the big one this episode.
Yeah.
I knew you were gonna pick Hannibal, so I went with Jillian
valid.
because
Totally valid.
can't with her. Can't
Nope.
with her. Who's your MVP?
Weirdly, I think I have to go with Freddie. Because Freddie is starting to see that everything is not adding up. And she might not have the best intentions, but she's the only one who's questioning what is going
Right.
on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally fair. I went with Jack. And I will not say that 100% of this episode I feel that way.
Right.
But it's the first time that he's really started questioning Hannibal. It's the first time that he's really started thinking maybe there's something more with Will, that like it's not just what it is. Like he's kind of starting to see things for what they are a little bit better. And so I went with him this episode.
That's fair.
But yeah, I only have one piece of trivia for you because I told you about everything else while we were in the episode. Brian Fuller's working on a new show. And it's similar to Hannibal. It is called Crystal Lake.
Oh,
and it is the prequel to Friday the 13th.
Stop.
I don't know when it's set to come out. I forgot to look. I just saw it announced like a month or two ago, and I keep forgetting to talk about it on here.
Well,
so
the thing is, every single day, when I open my news on Google, every single day I get another news article about Max Mikkelsen saying in an interview that Hannibal might not be done, and I refuse to click on any of them because I don't want to spoil anything for myself.
Right.
But like, if Brian Fuller is coming up with another serial killer prequel and Hannibal comes back, like, what the fuck?
what a wild year this is gonna be. Um, yeah, I also put out a poll this week on Instagram because I told you last week that I couldn't make a decision how we were gonna
I
do.
was just as you that's why I was looking at my
Yeah.
phone was to look at the results of the poll. I'm not gonna lie.
The results are that we are gonna do it chronological. I believe that means Hannibal Rising is first. I will confirm
Okay.
next week because we'll have the finale and then we'll have the series, the season wrap up, and then we'll have the movie. So
Yeah.
I will confirm with everyone next week what movie we're doing. Probably in the wrap up, I'll let you all know. But I think
And
it's Hannibal
and
Rising.
by next week, that means next week for us, but like 2 weeks for
Two
you
weeks. In
guys
two
watching
weeks,
this.
I'll confirm. I'll
Yeah.
confirm our full order in 2 weeks. But yeah, but I believe it's Hannibal Rising. If you want to, I will say, there's a trigger warning. There's an assaulty apparently episode scene
See?
in Hannibal Rising. I have not seen it.
Okay.
But I heard it's a little bit rough to watch.
Yeah.
So
Like
just a heads up.
first episode of Bates Motel Rough.
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So, but but yeah, apparently it's quick enough so we can, maybe you could just get past it if you need to. So, all right. On that note, if you want to email us, if you have things to say, questions to ask, you can email us deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me at CECloud13.
And you can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And we will see you for Sci-Fi Sunday.